Okay, this is the audio explainer for the group project for Soc 5. Okay, so the criminal justice system group project, the whole idea of it is, in general, you're going to collaborate on a paper and a presentation, right? So you're going to pick a topic with a specific research question and examine it from two different criminological theories that we discussed throughout the class at some point. So there's also another facet of this project where your group will contact someone that works in the criminal justice system. I'm going to waive that for the purpose of this paper because of, everything that's going on right now. So instead, you're just going to focus more on outlining your topic, talking about how the theories would analyze those things. So you just waive this part here highlighted in blue, but then you conclude your paper with a wrap up of your major points and suggestion for future research and how you think that the topic that you're looking at, how, as a community, we can do something about that, right? So each group is required to present their paper. And so the way this is going to work, obviously with everything going on, not having in-person classes, what we're going to do is I'm going to have a sign-up sheet for groups to sign up for time slots, and you're going to present to me via Zoom, right? So that you're still able to get the kind of presentation aspect that's required by, the learning objectives in the class, but it's a safe way to be able to do that stuff remotely, right? So going into the paper, right? So the basic requirements. So for the purpose of the paper, you form your groups, which you did. You pick a criminological topic that's related to the class, and you analyze it. So in that way, you basically explain it using those connections to class concepts, the relevance to the criminal justice system, and then you basically give me a standardized lit review, which I'll give you more examples of how to do that later on and kind of break that down. And you're going to analyze your topic from the position of a single research question, right? This kind of helps organize a paper and keep it focused. So, for example, it has to be a question that can be answered. It can't just be a yes or no. So it has to be something that's testable. So if your topic was mandatory minimums, like the example here in the assignment sheet, you can't simply say they're harmful. Your question should be phrased is something like, in what ways are mandatory minimum sentences having negative impacts on communities? So since you haven't done the firsthand research, you can't start from a place of simply saying that something is. That a research question has to be a question, right? That we have certain assumptions, but we have to test those assumptions, right? So the question should be stated at the end of your paper's introduction. That's just kind of the way it's organized. And you'll see here, I have these kind of little underlines here. Each one of these is going to be a heading of your paper, right? So introduction is going to be a section, literature review is going to be a section, theory is going to be a section. This part will not be a section. We'll completely ignore this part for the purpose of everything that's crazy right now. And then this one is going to be a section as well, right? So basically, actually just for the purposes of less confusion, I'll just do that for now. So anywho, you start with the intro, where you basically set up what is the topic, why does it matter, right? Why should we care about it? And then you pop in your research question, like in this paper, we're going to examine whether or not blah, 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 right? Then you're going to have a lit review section. So this is where you collaborate on concepts and sources from the materials, right? Like all our class materials. And outside sources, if you choose to use outside sources, they have to be peer-reviewed sources. So part of this, I put this file up on Canvas that has, it's called Resources for the Group Project. And if you look at that, obviously I had contacts for the whole contact a professional thing that we're not doing, but there's also a lot of links to more information and data sources that you can use for the project that I've kind of already found and compiled and researched for you. So feel free to browse through that and see if any of those things are helpful, right? To kind of save you the time of looking up stuff. So those are all links to, either organizations or things that are factually credible, right? And then, but yeah, if you choose to use other outside peer-reviewed resources, you're welcome to. I just didn't want to add like an extra element of more work when, if you just read the course materials, you can just use those, but you're welcome to bring in outside stuff, especially if you want to pick a topic that's not 100% what we're talking about, right? So anywho, You'll do that whole thing. You're going to connect it to the concepts, and we'll talk about that in a second too. So basically, explore your research question, trying to understand the dynamics of it. So for example, like if you were maybe looking at gang affiliations and how that works, or why people would join gangs, then you could talk about segments of Code of the Street that talk about alienation, adversarial relationships to authority, the broken systems that lead to that kind of alienation that can then drive people towards the street, right? Or, you can use an example that you saw in the film, Crips and Bloods, or any of those kind of things. So that's just the way that you're going to set up the literature review itself, is you're going to have a few different concepts where you connect and just basically explain what the topic is and relate how that works through the class resources, right? Blah, blah, blah. All right, next, you have a theory section. Pretty straightforward. You're going to analyze your topic from the perspective of at least 2 of the criminological theories we covered in the class. So any of the ones in that Intro to Crim textbook, and you explain how each theory would interpret or explain your topic, right? So again, if you're talking about mandatory minimums, well, how would labeling theory look at that, right? Or, if you're looking at any of the theories we've discussed, really, from beginning to end of the class, even if it's something we haven't gotten to yet, but we will get to, feel free to use it. Just really, all you're doing through this section is you're demonstrating what the theory says, so that I see that you understand, the theoretical analysis, and then you're being specific to how that theory would interpret your topic or the issues with your topic. Like, let's say it's racism within a system or something like that. Like, how would that particular theory understand it? What would they think is the purpose? What would they think, was the cause or the solution or things like that, right? So just basically, not just, you're going to give me a synopsis or like a little bit of a summary of what the theory is. Then you're going to say, you're going to use the analysis of what, apply that theory to your topic, right? Do that twice. And then your conclusion section, right? You wrap up your main points and the theories. You ignore the contact part. And then you propose what future research should be done to bring more clarification to your topic, as well as propose what ways communities or society can have a positive impact on the topic, right? So what could be done in a local community to alleviate the issues within your question, right? Or what could be improved within the systems that we have, right? Or, what kind of research should be done to find out information that we don't know, right? That kind of thing. All right, so all of this stuff here, some information here, suggested length. So 5 to 10 pages, double spaced. So yeah, it's basically 2.5 to 5 pages, spread among many of you. So the length of the requirement is not really my concern as much as the content, meaning I have to read these. So I want it to actually have, some substance to it, right? So the reason I say 5 pages is because like I say here in the assignment sheet, if it's under that, it's going to be very difficult to meet the standards of the assignment. Obviously, without the contacting the professional, it may be a little shorter as a result of that. That's fine. I don't mark you down if your paper is shorter or longer, just because writing style is very unique and some people are more succinct than others. So if you're able to make a very clear, very concise argument, great. Not a problem, right? I'm not going to mark it down because it's like 4.5 pages and not 5. The last thing I want you to do is have to BS another page to get to a page requirement, or to cut out a page to get it down to the page requirement, right? I care more about the content. So, but it's just to give you an idea of, it should at least be around 5 pages, because otherwise you're not giving enough information about these things, right? And then the grading rubric I'll go over in a second really goes into detail about what's expected, right? And then so the paper requires 10 sources. And by sources, I just mean contacts or connections to material. So let's say you used your Intro to Crim book for like 3 different chapters. That would be 3 different sources, even though it's the same source. Does that make sense? So basically, you just have to, like you would do with your reaction papers, have class concepts as connections. You just have to do that 10 times. So here it says that you can have your 5 in class and 5 peer reviewed, but honestly, I'm completely fine with all 10 being in class sources. That way you don't have to actually do any sort of outside research. So feel free to just use class materials. Obviously, like I said, there's those resources for the group project. There's a whole bunch of other options there as well of things that I think would be helpful for some of you depending on your topic. So please look through that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to make it cumbersome or really difficult. I'm just trying to make sure that you're learning something, right? All right, so for the ASA style, that's the citation style I expect. In the in-text part, I'm fine with it being somewhat informal, meaning it could literally be like, in chapter 4, it says blank, or, labeling theory according to Introduction to Criminology, or something like that, so that it doesn't have to be super formal. But here I give you links to the Purdue OWL website. Just look at their ASA resources. That I just want to be as clear as humanly possible. Just the citations. I don't care about the manuscript formatting. There's all this other crap about that. You don't have to do that for this, where you have to make a cover page and an abstract. None of that is required for the assignment. The only thing you have to do is just cite in text, either by last name and year, or just say in Code of the Street, and I'll know where it's coming from because I literally assigned you these resources, right? For the post text, right, the one that's basically your reference page, that one I want you to make sure to do an ASA style. But let's say you use the textbook 5 different times. You just have to cite it once. You don't have to say chapter 9 within this book, because it's a pain in the ass to cite like that. So I'm totally fine with if I look at your citation page and it's Code of the Street, 13th, and New Jim Crow, and that's it. I'd be like, okay, cool, fine. As long as you had 10 connections to those 3 resources, that's all you have to do, right? So it's a little bit different than, the kind of more cumbersome research paper. All right, so now later on, I'll talk about presentations once we get closer to that. So for now, I just want to go through the rubric really quick to kind of clarify this stuff. So this is how you're getting points, right? Obviously, when it comes to some of this stuff, I'm going to obviously change it a little bit because of the whole the whole situation of not having the interview, right? Obviously. So anyway, basically, let me go through this. So first, you're going to get 9 points for the purpose or focus on the topic. So basically, if you go through this whole step by step, you're going to see exactly how I'm going to grade each paper. So I'm looking to see if your paper stays on topic throughout, if it's engaging and interesting, if it's focused narrowly enough for the scope of the assignment, you're not trying to basically ask a question that's way too complex, right? And that the research question is stated clearly and provides direction for your paper. The analysis I'm looking for is that your paper would effectively and insightfully demonstrate critical thinking using appropriate examples, evidence, and citations. That you would accurately interpret evidence and statements. So, for example, if you're using a quote, that what you say the quote says is what it actually says. Or, if you're using interpreting the theories, that you have an actual understanding of that, right? That the paragraphs themselves have supporting details, that the research is thorough, right? Also, I'm looking in the understanding section here, that your paper demonstrates an understanding of the topic and the implications it has, right? The kind of sociological analysis that we're doing. That you have a rich development and a clear awareness of the topic, right? That it's not fragmented, it's not unclear, it's pretty, cohesive and has a flow to it, right? And that the concepts are integrated into the writer's own insights. So what that just means is that I'm looking to see how you explain and apply the concepts instead of just, this is the concept, this is the definition, move on to the next thing. How do you explain what that definition is and why that's important, right? I'm looking for more so than consuming knowledge, you're producing knowledge through these kind of papers, right? Alrighty, so organization, that's a really important one. If you use transitions, it makes the paper flow so much better and it just makes more sense that way, right? So a transition, for example, let's say you're talking about 2 different sources for the paper, you just say something like, another way that, this is related to my topic is blank, right? So some way to kind of keep connecting the points. Otherwise, it just becomes paragraph 1, point 1, paragraph 2, point 2. And if there's no transition, it just kind of sits flat and dead, right? So think a little bit about that. That's why it's good to kind of get most of it done early, then you have time to edit, you have time to kind of draft it out and go through it. It makes the paper much more compelling, right? Tone and style, is it interesting? Is it engaging? Is it written in formal language and not like, hey, dude, and using a bunch of contractions and stuff? Does it have effective use of phrases, right? And then, of course, the ASA stuff. Is it cited in ASA? I'm looking for that. Did you, meet the minimum requirement of sources, meaning did you make 10 connections? All that kind of stuff. And then the mechanics, just meaning, are you just like furthermore for every paragraph when you're not even furthering anything? Or are you having, kind of varied, connected, thoughtful, sentence structure? Are you using, kind of vocabulary in an effective way, right? Are there large spelling errors, grammar errors, sentence structure things? See, this is why it's like, if you have the time working collaboratively, you can draft out your stuff. Then when you're done with your section, just make sure you're spell checking. Make sure you're going through and reading it once out loud, because sometimes you don't catch things when you look at it that you do when you read it out loud. So for example, I'll give you an embarrassing example. I remember the first draft of my thesis I turned in when I was at graduate school. I was looking at media and perceptions of presidential candidates. And I basically, in the first part of the abstract, I had said female resident instead of president, which apparently is a word. And when you run a spell check, you're not going to catch something like that. But the context was completely different between resident and president. So before my mentor even got into the paper, he just circles and puts a question mark around the word resident. Like, what the hell is this? So yeah, sometimes that one letter makes a big difference in the word, right? So just, taking that extra 5 minutes really to go through, check the mechanics, just really kind of fine tune like the word choices for the organization and style. All that kind of stuff makes such a huge difference in the outcome of your paper. And really here you see how that's like a fair amount of points. If you're talking about just making sure that it's organized well, right? That there's some, really interesting points and then it flows, right? That the sentence structure is correct. That's a significant part of the points for the paper. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're, kind of going through and trying to prep, because this is why I give you my grading rubric. The point isn't to bore you to death with the grading rubric, which is also part of it. No, I'm just kidding. Not purposefully, but the idea is that if you see this, then you know exactly how I'm grading it. Then you can prepare your paper to basically get 100%, right? So anyway, this assignment sheet is on Canvas and available. You can check that out. Later, I will post another one just specifically talking about the presentations and how we're going to do that through Zoom. So stay posted for that. But for now, I just wanted to put this up so that you could start working on the project and have an idea about the context of how your paper is going to turn out, right?